Welcome to the Luke Macias Show. While nationally speaking, it was a bad night for Republicans. In Texas, we have a number of huge victories by conservative grassroots activists and the party. And so we're going to talk about those and then also talk about how so many people are getting wrong the benefits to those moving here to Texas. Let's get to the show. Last night was not a good night for Republicans. It never is. And if you're wondering why is that, why is it not a good night for Republicans a year after a resounding victory by Donald Trump? It's because Republicans think things are going well. And here's the reality. In a representative republic, when half of the country thinks things are going well in general, they think they're winning, they're not as motivated to get out and participate in the electoral process as the other half of the country who thinks they're losing. You always say, run like you're behind. You've heard that term, and we talk about that term in politics a lot. We say, look, I know you're doing really well, but run like you're behind. You're trying to create in yourself an urgency that you don't necessarily feel just by waking up in the morning. When you wake up in the morning and the Biden administration is in charge and there's some trans doctor leading the army or something and some secretary of the Navy who's trying to be a woman, who's a man, and random stuff's happening and they're literally attacking you. They're trying to indoctrinate your children. We'll get to the J. Jones situation in Virginia. Sometimes they literally want to kill your children. When you see that on the rise and in power, you're like, we got to go. We got to wake up and I got to tell everybody I know to vote. And that's not how you feel when you watch the Charlie Kirk memorial service and you see heads of state exhorting all of us to pursue Christ. You don't then go, man, I got to vote in a month or two. It's not our natural bent. So in these odd off-cycle November elections, it's much, much harder to get Republicans all off their butts and to the polls. That's the reality. Will this upcoming November be as bad as this last election? Unlikely. Unlikely. But Republicans have to be motivated to vote. And we are all going to have to work very hard from now till November to make sure that happens. Before we get there, though, there's going to be a robust and healthy primary. And last night we had a little bit of a precursor to that in the Senate District 9 special election. Lee Wamsgans is a conservative activist and leader who has been a loud voice for conservative policy and an organizer around the party, in the grassroots, at Patriot Mobile. And so naturally, Republicans and conservatives all united behind her campaign. But Sands Casinos decided to spend $3.5 million to try to buy a state Senate seat. And they recruited John Huffman to run. So John Huffman ran, and over 95% of the money that he spent came from Sands. $3.5 million. If we're going to be precise, they spent $3,487,256 that we know of, meaning that was money that was spent and then coordinated with the Huffman campaign. So the Texas Defense PAC was spending from Sands, and then Sands PAC was spending from Sands. And some of it was directly to John's campaign that would then be used to buy television, and the rest was run separately. But the total, if you add all that up, is $3,487,256. So $3,487,256. John Huffman, their candidate, who they spent that much money on, last night got 16.49% of the vote, which meant that they spent $178 for every vote that he got. Also, by the way, in one of the first polls put out in this race, John Huffman was polling in the teens. He was literally polling in the teens before anybody spent any money on him. Lee Wamsgans, if you add up all the stuff that was spent, other groups, her, everything else, my kind of vantage point when I looked at it all, I think it's less than $2 million. And she got 42,702 votes, which is 35.9% of the vote. She spent $47 a vote. And then the Democrat got 47.5% of the vote. That is a district that Colin Allred, when he ran against Ted Cruz, got 43% of the vote in. So you can see that bump in Democrat enthusiasm. There was a bump. There was an increase. They were more motivated to vote. In fact, on election day, Remitt, the Democrat, won 51% of the vote. The runoff will be January 31st. The winner of that runoff will only serve for 10 months, okay? But the actual election will be this March and November for who is voting in 2027. Lee Wamsgans crushed it. She got outspent almost 2-1 and absolutely dominated John Huffman. Sands Casinos is telling everyone that they are going to come in and spend millions of dollars this cycle. They are already telling people, Andy Hopper, David Lowe, maybe Mike Alcott, maybe Helen Kerwin, any of these conservative Republicans, will drop $1 million against all of them. They're actively trying to find people to run for other Senate districts where Trump has already endorsed conservatives in those districts. They're trying to come in there and say, let's put millions of dollars. And last night was a wake-up call. I'm going to tell y'all, the insiders in Austin all kept chirping about how Sands might win. And there was this salivating at the concept and idea of Dan Patrick maybe losing, of conservatives losing this open Senate seat, and Sands coming out victorious. And over the last several weeks, a lot of the Austin Inside crowd in the lobby would say things like, I'm hearing Sands says they're up. I'm hearing everyone for Lee's kind of freaking out. But what conservatives decided to do was, instead of peacocking around, instead of trying to play the insider game of we're bigger and badder and better, conservatives just focused on turning people out to vote. Drive your message home, stay disciplined, focus, deliver victory. And that's what happened last night. Even those who were very optimistic thought Lee Wamsgans might beat John Huffman by 6 or 7 points, 10 points. She ends up beating him by 20 percentage points. There was a poll released last Friday that showed that she was getting 54% hard commits, 53% hard commits from Republican primary voters, and they were 50% of the vote, which probably meant she was going to get 65% of those Republicans to vote for her. Why would a special interest casino spend $3.5 million on a candidate who's never even going to cast a vote and has to win a primary that he's really behind in? Why would they do that? Because they have a desire to, over time, move the legislature back into the control of the lobby. That's what they want. They want the legislature controlled by the Austin lobbyists. And they will spend millions and millions and millions of dollars and lose, and then spend millions and millions and millions of dollars again and lose, and then spend millions and millions and millions of dollars again. And I'll tell you why. I was talking to a state representative just the other day who does not like Sands, who does not want casinos. And he said something. He said, I really wish. The implication was like he wished they didn't see him as their enemy. And that's why they spend all the money. They're losing ground. Let me be clear. They're losing ground every cycle. They get less and less votes. Now they're to the point to where they just have to spend money to hope that a group of lawmakers who don't like that public policy will just go, they're just spending so much money, I'm just going to do whatever they want Done. Or not that I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to stand in their way. Or I'm going to stand in their way, but I want to stand in their way. This is actually like I want to stand in their way and I'll never vote for it, but I kind of don't want to ever say anything because I'm just scared that they'll spend $1 million against me. And at least they've moved the conversation just ever so slightly. The good news is they're losing votes. It kind of is like the election. They can peacock and spend money and do whatever they want, but at the end of the day, when the vote takes place, they lost a ton of votes. And they're in the same position in the legislature. This was a huge victory. Last night was a huge, resounding victory for the grassroots. And it sent a message that voters really don't want casinos to come in and try to buy the legislature. And I'm going to tell you, the March electorate is even more against casinos coming in trying to buy the legislature. The March electorate is even more offended than the electorate that just destroyed and demolished the casino candidate and chose the conservative Lee Wamsgans to go on to the runoff against the Democrat, and will choose her to be the Republican nominee. So I hope y'all see that.
But every day I run into something that I'm dealing with the county judge.
Judge Bray recused himself, but as we'll soon see, he couldn't resist reinserting himself into the process.
Signing notices, setting deadlines, accepting candidate applications, rejecting candidate applications. The dispute that ensued thereafter was centered on whether or not Judge Bray had the authority to do those things or should have been doing those things.
Head over to TexasScorecard.com today to watch our latest documentary, Kicking the Circle.
A couple other victories that were had. Prop Q was, of course, a big discussion being had about the city of Austin, who wanted to push, I think, the largest property tax increase in city history, rather than make just some slight cuts that they need to make. It was resoundingly defeated. And I will tell you, based on how bad it was defeated, more Democrats voted against the property tax increase than for it. So it wasn't just Republicans. It wasn't just independents. The Democrats did not want their property taxes going up. And I'm going to remind everyone about the debate and discussion that was had at the end of the last legislative session, when the state Senate did not want property tax relief to be given to all Texans, did not want all of the Republican cities to get the same amount of relief protections as the big cities. Everyone is fed up with their property taxes. Everyone is frustrated. I live in a school district that is a Democrat school district. We have a Democrat school board, and numerous bonds were defeated last night. And a couple bonds that passed barely passed because on the bond it says this is a property tax increase. And even Democrats are going, I don't want a property tax increase. I can't afford my property taxes. And remember, the bill that was on the floor at the time that Mitch Little and Mike Alcott and multiple other members got up and articulately defended the conservative position and tried to expand this bill. Nate Schatzline, Brent Money. When that bill was made better in the House, they said people are sick and tired. And this bill is only making it harder to raise them. It's not giving you relief. It's just harder to raise your taxes. So I believe that over the next year, we are going to have a robust discussion about the necessity of actual property tax relief in Texas, a robust and bold plan. And I'm hopeful that Republicans can have more unity around that idea. Property tax relief was not prioritized this session. We came in with a massive surplus, and we delivered way less than half of it in new property tax relief. Less than $7 billion in new property tax relief with a $24 billion surplus. Texans for Fiscal Responsibility has, of course, been the leading voice on property tax relief efforts and a push. And if you're not following the work they're doing, then please do that. Go to Texans for Fiscal Responsibility. I think it's TexasTaxpayers.org. I might be wrong. Or .com. I never remember .org or .com, but it's Texas Taxpayers. Let's just say .org. Go there. plug in with what they're doing, get engaged with what they're doing, because they're having a pretty big impact on moving this discussion in the right direction. We have to take property taxes more seriously. Prop Q in Austin should be a wake-up call to people. Even the Democrats are saying, no more. Stop taxing me. Imagine what would happen if a Prop Q level property tax increase were on the ballot for Republicans. They would destroy it. Sadly, the way the Senate bill was designed last session, if you're in a small Republican city, they could do massive property tax increases without needing you to vote on it, because they're carved out. So I think we can see the importance of giving Republicans the same voice that we gave Democrats in Austin with Prop Q, and making sure that it has statewide application and implications regardless of what the policy is. All the propositions passed. I didn't vote for all of them. I voted for most of them. I'm very grateful. I will tell you, there would have been worse things that happened if a lot of them had failed than if a couple of them passed that I didn't like. So yes, there were bad ones that I voted against, but those being implemented, none of them are devastating policies. And there were some really important policies. There was one that says people, only U.S. citizens can vote. That is currently the law in Texas, but it just doubled down on it, so made it even harder for them to vote in any way. And then the parental rights amendment that was on there, the bail reform was incredibly important to set the tone for saying we need to stop these violent criminals. We need to crack down in our criminal justice system. I talked last week about these rogue elected officials who are breaking the law to stop death penalty cases from moving forward. Both Republicans and Democrats that are doing that. It's insane to watch. And so bail reform it fits within this entire conversation of like, let's stop being pro-criminal and let's reassert our confidence in the justice system and push policies that restore law and order to society. Really, really, really important. November is not going to be an easy election. We're going to go through the primary. We're going to go through the runoffs. But November is not going to be an easy election at all. At all. It is really, really important that you understand that a lot of your Republican friends are not motivated because they're not scared. And here's what I'm going to close with. Jay Jones, the Democrat candidate for Attorney General. There's a lot of hand-wringing last night because Jay Jones said he wanted Republican elected officials' kids to die. That's what he said. He wanted them to die. And there was a lot of hand-wringing. A lot of people saying, I can't believe the Democrats elected this guy. One of the polls that was out a week or two ago said that Jay Jones only had an 18% favorability. An 18% favorability. And in that poll, he was going to win by 1 or 2 points. And he won by 1 or 2 points. You want to know why? Because the left are playing to win. Even those Democrats who would say, I really don't like that Jay Jones said that he wishes Republicans' kids would die. That makes me think poorly of him. They'd say, do you think he should be the most powerful law enforcement official in Virginia? They go, yeah, I'm voting for him. Wait. And see, you hear that and you go, well, why? Why would they vote for him? Because they want to win. Because they know if they have the power, they can win. Republicans, our tendency is to continue to purity test. And guys, I say this as somebody who's seen as one of the most probably conservative Republican activists in Texas. And people get mad at the tagline, the conservative voice of Texas. But like a conservative voice in Texas it's just not that cool. So the conservative voice of Texas. But I'm on the conservative side of the GOP. If y'all listen to this program regularly, like I call out rhino Republicans all the time, and they should be called out. They should be held accountable. We should try to defeat them. But you need to understand that the fight against the Democrats is good versus evil, light versus darkness. That is what's at stake. And the darkness will vote for the darkest of candidates, even if he wants the opposition's kids to die. They will vote for him. That's how committed they are to advancing their leftist agenda. That's what we're up against. So wake up. Get ready to fight for as many conservatives as you can in this next primary and runoff and all of that. And then get ready to be motivated. Remember, we're at war. And the stakes are high. I haven't had time to talk about, and I'll talk about this next week, the importance of us inviting all of the new transplants in. And I will try to remember to talk about that next week, but I feel like I've gone long enough. So God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Texas.